James chapter number 1. James chapter 1. Gave a little teaser this morning about what the message is going to be about, and it's count it all joy. Count it all joy. James chapter 1, we'll stand for reading God's Word. It says this: James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, of the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. And if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you, Lord, for your word, and we thank you it's a living word, and how, Lord, how true in all these years this word still holds true. And Lord, just bless us and help us, and just let this be a clear thought, clear message that would just be an encouragement to people, and we'd leave changed. In Jesus' name, amen. That key verse this evening is verse number 2, and it says, My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations. And James is opening up this entire book, and it's amazing to me, he's opening up this book, and the first thing he talks about, and the first thing he addresses within the first 2 verses is count it all joy. And he's talking to his brethren, and interesting enough, that's what he begins with. Now, if I'm directing a message to the brethren in the day that I live, and you was writing a book of the Bible, I don't know how you would start that book. I don't know what you might say. But I don't know that we would say what James said in James 1 and 2, My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations. I mean, what in the world is he thinking, and what's going through his mind to start out a book, and for him to even say that to begin with, count it a joy when you fall into diverse temptations. Count that a joy when you fall into a mess. I mean, that don't even make sense. I mean, is he crazy to say count that a joy? I mean, it's a scripture that you pull to and you think about when you're going through things, count it a joy, but my gosh, is James crazy? Well, the word joy comes from a Greek word meaning cheerfulness, delight, gladness, and so what he's saying there is to count it all joy. When you fall into these diverse temptations, be cheerful. And he says, count it all joy. All joy is everything. Let everything be joyful. I mean, things that ought not be joyful can be joyful. Count it all means every single thing. I mean, there's some things that you do joy about, I hope. But then there's some things that you don't even think and realize that could be joyful. And he's saying be joyful even in those diverse temptations. And why is he saying that? Well, these verses to follow, and I'll be honest with you, I was asking myself that. Why did he say this? Well, these verses to follow do pick it apart and then tell us why. But he says, My brethren, count it all joy when ye fall. It says in verse 2, when ye fall. Guess what? You will fall. It says when you fall. It don't say if you fall, if you might fall. He says when you fall. He says you and I will fall. We all will. And we will fall. We will stumble. And he says in verse 2, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall. When you fall into what? He says fall into. Now that's a strange phrase, fall into. I started looking into that and looking it up, and the phrase fall into, it comes from a Greek word, and it's parasipito. And it comes from 2 words. So you put those 2 words together, it comes from those 2 root words. Well, the first root word is peri, meaning all over or all around. And then pipto means fall. So together you have that word peripipto, and what it means is you're falling into, and you're falling all around something. And what it leads you to believe, and the vision that it gives you, is it gives you a picture of just a situation or an event that has surrounded you. It's all around you. It's covered you. You're surrounded by an issue. You fell into it, and everywhere you look to the left, you look to the right, everywhere you look, there's there's that issue. It's all around. It's a diverse temptation, and you fell into it. That word peri is all over, all around, and that picto means you fail, and it's all over. It's like you go to bed thinking about it. You wake up with whatever it is on your mind, and it's a constant struggle. And you're just constantly thinking about it. And that's what James 1:2 is talking about. He says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall, because you will fall. But not only will you fall, you'll fall into this place where you're surrounded by it. You're covered by it. And everywhere you look is diverse temptations. Diverse temptations are simply trials of different kinds. And what he's saying is when you fall into these trials and you fall into these struggles of different kinds, count it a joy. Now, I'll tell you, that's a hard thing. That's a hard thing for a preacher to preach, you see, because it's a hard thing for me to believe that when you fall into those things that you've got to count it a joy. But the rest of this passage and these other verses that James kind of pulls together here, why he can count it a joy. I mean, it makes you wonder, what was he thinking? Because that's hard for us to comprehend, that we can count it a joy when we fall into these things. Because, like I said last Wednesday, Job 14:1, he says, man is born of a woman and he's just full of troubles. I mean, we've got all these troubles and all these trials and all these things going on. And you're like, what are you talking about, James? How are we going to count it a joy when we fall into something that feels like we're surrounded by it? Well, I believe James knew a little bit. He knew a little bit. Because when you look at the calling, James was one of the first disciples that was called of Jesus. And in Matthew 4:19, he told Peter, and he said, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. It says, and straightway they left their nets and followed him. But then it says, going on from thence, he saw two other brethren, James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, in a ship. So Jesus calls Peter, and he keeps on going. Then he sees James and John, and it says, and immediately they left the ship and their father and followed him. Now I want you to think about this just a minute. When they left everything to follow Jesus. Following Jesus costed James and John and these disciples, it costed them everything. But it gave them everything. I mean, they left their family business. They left their familiar surroundings. They left their family. They left their comfort. I mean, they left it all. And they left that to go follow Jesus. And I would say is when it comes to temptations and seeing things, going through that was one thing, but as they followed Jesus, James saw some things. James knew what it was like to be tried. He knew it. And that's why he was able to say in verse 2, count it all joy when you fall into these diverse temptations. Now let's look at just about 4 things here that he says. Look at verse 3. It says, knowing this, that the trying of your faith. See, it tells me that I have a pressure or a trying of our faith. I can count it a joy. I can mark it down as a joyful thing because I've got faith that can be pressured. He left his family business. He left his surroundings. He left his family. James left it all. He knew what it was like to face some things, but he counted it a joy. Why did he count it a joy? Because he left all these things because of faith. And it says in verse 3, knowing this, that the trying of your faith, the trying of your faith works patience. Now, we don't want to pray for patience. And we don't want to ask God for more patience, and he may try us. But here's the thing. When I go through things and I face these diverse temptations and we face things in life, we can count it a joy and we can put a smile on our face because I've got faith in something that's getting tried to begin with. So anytime we're going through things and anytime we feel pressured, we can know and we can see that it's a faith being tried. His faith was in Jesus. He left everything to be with Jesus. And if you and I got faith in Jesus, And if we've got faith in something, then we ought to count it down and mark it as a joy because I've got faith in something that's being tried. Praise the Lord that we've got faith. Praise the Lord my faith is in somebody. Because it's a trying of your faith. Look what else it says in verse 3. It worketh patience. You can count it a joy because your faith is being tried, but also that it's working patience. Those things going on, those diverse temptations that we're facing, they all work patience. It means it takes time. That means it takes perseverance. It takes patience. See, in themselves, a car accident is probably not a good thing. A cancer diagnosis is not a good thing. Losing your job is not a good thing. But see, all things are working together for the good. All things, different things. And it takes patience. You can't just pluck one thing up and say, that's going to be working for some good. It's all these things working together, and patiently they are going to happen. They will work out. During that struggle, we might not see it, and you might not feel it right away and instantly when we face these things, but over time and through patience, God is working. You know, I think back to the call to preach, and as I was going past preaching different places, I'd go and preach, and it's like being on a blind date every time you went somewhere. You just didn't know what you was walking into. You didn't know anything. You didn't know anything about the people. They didn't know a lot about me. And you'd go preach, and it'd be one closed door after another. But as you go through things and you wonder, Lord, where are you headed? Lord, where are you going with this? Lord, why did you get me here just to close that door? Why, Lord, did you put me here and make me go through this and go through interviews and then get voted on and then say, don't take that church? Why did you do all that, Lord? Because gradually it's all working for some good, and it's all working for some patience. We see a faith that's being tried. We see it's working patience. But look at verse 4. It says, but let patience have her perfect work. We see it's a perfecting work. These things going on, these diverse temptations, they're a perfecting work. So when we face issues and we are going through these diverse temptations, it's a perfecting work. Now, you may say, I'm never going to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. Well, the word perfect means growth to completeness, full of age, or perfect. And in other words, what he's saying is we're going to mature. We're going to grow up. And I'll tell you, you grow up quick when you step out on faith with the Lord, and when you're going through things and your faith is being pushed to the test and you're pushed to the limit. But it says there in verse 4, but let patience have her perfect work, that you may be perfect. That means we're going to be complete. That means it's going to work out to some completeness and bring us up to full of age. But then it says, and entire, wanting nothing. That means every part. There's not going to be anything lacking. Every bit of us, the entire bit of us, and I know that none of us going to be perfect, but we're going to a place one day that is perfect and it is complete. But when we face these like it says in verse 2, these diverse temptations, when I face these things, it's making me more complete. It's making me more whole. It's making me more. It's kind of like I think about those babies. You start out giving them those bottles. And then, the doctor said, hey, you're supposed to give them a bottle for so and so long. And then found out Ashley sneaking stuff all the time. I was like, God, because I'm a rule follower. I was like, you got to do this, you got to do that. But then you go to those yogurt melts, and then you go to mushed up crackers. I don't know what they do. You just keep on. But eventually you get to the meat and you get to the good stuff. But that's the way it is in our faith. It's working patience, and it's bringing about some fullness. It's bringing about some completion to us, and it's a perfecting work. I said it the other night that in 1 Peter 1:7 says the trial of your faith, the faith that is being put to the test, is much more precious than of gold that perishes. Because though it be tried with fire, it might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. Without those trials and without those things that we go through, without those diverse temptations, There won't be a fire. And it says through that fire is the trying of our faith. See, without that fire, your faith can't be tried. But once our faith is tried, whatever goes through that fire, it's refined. And you find out who's really in and you find out who's really out. You find out who's a real Christian, who's really for Christ. We find out really just our true makeup when we go through that. And it's a perfecting word. Lastly, look at verse number 5. We see these trials, they pressure our faith. They work patience. They're a perfecting work. But number 5 says, but if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. See, I can count it all joy because I've got a God that I can go to. And when I go through things and when I'm faced with things, I can count it a joy because I've got a God that I can go to in the midst of all of them. See, if I lack wisdom, and guess what? We all lack wisdom, then we've got to go to God. He's got all the wisdom. He's got all the wisdom that when I don't understand, He understands. When I don't know what to do, He knows what to do. And I wouldn't face these things if it wasn't for diverse temptations. And if it's all smooth sailing, we'd puff our chest out, because we do it when we're going through things. But if it was smooth sailing, we'd puff our chest out and act like we didn't need God. But we face things and we go through things so we can pursue God. And we know that we need God. It says, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. Because see, when you go to God and you ask of Him, and that's why we seek Him, and that's why we count it all a joy. But it says in verse 5 that He giveth. He giveth to all men liberally. I mean, liberally means bountifully. Remember, God is the giver of all good things. He don't just give it, but He will give it to you liberally. He will pour it on you. And it says in verse number 5 that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given to him. We read upbraideth not, which means He does not reproach or rebuke, and He don't treat people harshly. In other words, He upbraideth us not. In other words, when I'm going through things and I'm going through these diverse temptations, He just loves on you. He puts His arm around you. He cares about you. And I'll tell you, when you're going through things and you're seeking wisdom, if you're seeking just sincere wisdom, like, Lord, what do you want me to do? Lord, as pastor, where do you want me to go? Where do you want the church to go? If I truly believe if I go to God with an honest and a pure heart, with no selfish motives, not trying to cash in, not trying to do something for myself or make a name for myself, if we're doing it to uplift Him, I tell you, I truly believe He won't rebuke us. He won't treat us harshly. He will give us the wisdom if we ask for it. Well, how'd you get to that place of asking for wisdom? Well, I'm going through diverse temptations. I don't know what to do. I'm getting, I don't know where to go. I don't know. So what do? You count it all a joy. And that's amazing to think that you can count all these things a joy because of the pressure of our faith. I can count that a joy because I've got a faith that is pressure. I can count it a joy because it's working some patience. That right now it might not seem good. Right now I don't have an answer, but it's patiently working. But I also read that it's a perfect work. I can count it a joy because it's making us who we ought to be. It's perfecting us. But lastly, it leads us to pursue God. And I can count these diverse temptations as a joy because it's directing me to Him. It's telling me, hey, Dustin, you don't know half what you think you know. And you're just going to have to go to it. That's why we read in verse 2, my brethren, count it all a joy when you fall into diverse temptations. I thought James was crazy. I don't know about you, but we've seen things and faced things here lately. Nothing major, just little stuff. But the Lord laid that verse on my heart, and I said, who in the world and how crazy is that to say, I count it all a joy? Well, I started investigating that, and we can see we can count it a joy. And I'm thankful that James started out the book of James, 2nd verse, count it all a joy when you fall into diverse temptations. You know, we're all going to face things. And when we do, let's count it a joy and see the good and see God and see how He's working through it all. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I don't know what people may be going through and what people may be going through online, but Lord, we're all going through things and we're all faced with things. But we can count it a joy just to know that I've got a faith in a God. I've got a faith and I've got somewhere I can turn. It ain't a doctor. It ain't a doctor that can mess up results. It ain't man, but it's far beyond man, and it's in God. And I'm thankful, Lord, that I've got a God in heaven that has an ear and hears. And I can count it all a joy when we face these diverse temptations. Lord, as we go through things, and maybe we're not facing it now, but when we do face it, let us count it a joy. Let us be cheerful, knowing that we've got you. Be cheerful that it's working some patience. Be cheerful that it's all working out. It's making us who we ought to be. And be cheerful that God will give us that wisdom. Lord, we praise you. We thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.